Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody had a great past Yule Lesser Sabbath. I know a lot of Brotherhood people were actually celebrating this weekend. Um, the national office here, we've had two separate Yules. I'm pretty sure one downstairs, and also Raven and I have done one um, as well. And there's so much going on. We're in a sabbatical time right now as far as Brotherhood Saint and events and things going on. Just through the holiday season, right after the calendar New Year, not the witches' New Year, which was Samhain. So we're kind of taking a break, enjoying a little bit of the solstice energy for the rebirth of the sun. You know. So I thought though that this is a great weekend to do something special, right? Most of you know Drew often references a subject that um, is kind of taboo within Satanism or controversial to say the least, because it's really more connected with generational Satanism. And you know how secret we've always been. And it's called the Dark Druids. Okay. So what Drew's going to discuss today is the Dark Druids and our connection to the Brotherhood. Okay. Very, very cool. And in order for me to discuss the Dark Druids, I would like to give a little bit of my own background in the Dark Druids as connected with generational Satanism and the Brotherhood. You'll notice today I am wearing purple, and I'm also wearing my purple Baphomet in honor of this subject. And within the Brotherhood, the color purple is a signification of an archhigh member of our high infernal clergy. But it's much, much more than that. It's actually a cloak of the royal craft. And yes, that goes back to hereditary satanic witchcraft connected with nobility and royalty over in Europe. So it's in honor of what I'm speaking about today, I decided to wear this cloak. Okay. Before I get into the subject of the Dark Druids, I want to mention something. You'll see right here, behind the scythe, and you'll see the death mask above it. That white robe is actually my Druid robe, or cloak. And it's what I wear in Druid meetings nationally if I attend some of the Bardic chairs or the Druid chairs or the Gorseds or other Grove meetings within the neo-pagan community and their connection with the Druids, right? This would be what I wear. And this is what I wear if I do go to those things. I'm also, by blood, an hereditary Dark Druid. My ancestry comes from ancient Gaul, when we were still tribes. A lot of Basque connection in with that too, with that bloodline. When Rome invaded Gaul, province that was founded by my bloodline, they said it was already an ancient province. So that was tribal, very definitely. And of course, Druidic. There was also statues excavated in Upper France, which also at that time, of course, back in history was Gaul, where they excavated a statue called Lyre de Paul, which was translated by the archaeologist as Bard and Druid of Gaul. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. And that actually is going back in Bardic history, right? Going back in Gallic history, my own connections to my tribal bloodlines back there when we were the Aquitani tribes. Now, later Aquitani became the nobility of the region. That's another story. That's not what we're talking about today. So my qualifications in the Dark Druids are many. But my qualifications as a Dark Druid are also separate than my qualifications as an Archdruid in the regular Druid orders today as well. Okay. The Dark Druids were always associated with the Brotherhood. My own adopted family, my own family that fostered me as a child, was a brother generational family, and they were an Irish clan family. Satanic as hell, generational as hell as far as the Brotherhood, and Dark Druidism in the family lines going way, way back into Ireland, okay, and these places over in Europe. Again, like my own bloodline actually was too. Okay. So I got taught both areas of Druidism. I was very fortunate. And when I'm going back to talking about the cloaks and stuff that Druids wear, yes, this is what we wear in the modern time, but not true. Drew's still going to wear dark. And Drew's going to tell you some things about the cloaks of the Druid revival, for instance, that became white cloaks, right, for the Druids to wear. Originally, we wore animal skins, leather outfits, quite a bit of things like kilts, wore horned antlers. Out in the forest, you couldn't tell who we were when we had to fight the Romans. Believe me, we took the word camouflage to an extreme. We could paint our faces. We blended in with the oak trees, and of course, the oak trees were always our friends and family as well. It's another story about the Dark Druids, isn't it? I got my name, Druwydion Pendragon, at a very large pagan event that happened here in the United States. So it was actually separate from what my family brought me up. Okay. Actually, my family sent me to the Pan Pagan Festival in the first place was my grandmother. Okay, that's another story about her activities in the Brotherhood. It's coming up when I talk about the Brotherhood in Hollywood. Okay, but that's another upcoming vid. Okay. And back to what I was saying about the cloaks. So we did not wear these white cloaks, right? Back in the day, we wore dark cloaks. Or we wore very, very much the animal skins, the things that you would normally see the shamans wearing. There you go. Because Dark Druids always were shamans too. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Dark Druids, right? Now, the Dark Druids also have levels, just like the Druid revival orders of today. I also knew Isaac Bonowitz quite well from our Druwydion, okay? The Druid Fellowship, order of Ovites, Bards, and Druids as well. You know, Philip Comgar, of course, the current arch Druid, and other people that I've met throughout my own Druid history that I've met personally. Isaac Bonowitz, for instance, here's a satanic connection for all the people that wonder, how Druids connect with Indians. We always have, okay, but that's another story. And we were connected to the Brotherhood, so there's the secrecy part, right? But Isaac, before he actually became a Druid, was on the Berkeley campus advocating for the Church of Satan. So that tells you he was a very early Church of Satan member before he really went full time into the Druidic craft. But that's another story too. Again, the Drew who's been around a while knows all this history, okay, because I've actually lived. Isaac, when I met him, was in 1983. The same time I was visiting Ray Buckland's camp at the same event. I actually got to be the Druid for the grand ritual that happened at that event. But when I met Isaac actually called me and said, Drew, because I had received Druwydion Pendragon 3 years before that at the 80 Pan Pagan Festival, the entitlement to be a Pendragon. Another story, too. And yes, it was associated with Dark Druids. Now, my activities in neo-paganism, I was loved and feared, actually, because people would go whisper about you, oh, he's on the dark side, this and this, right? But they all would come to me for knowledge or to actually participate and be a part of all the big rituals, right? They all wanted Drew there. So that's real. And sometimes in leadership, it does happen that you're loved and hated. You know, you're going to have people that don't like what you do too, even when you come from the best place in your heart, like I do. That goes with the territory. Okay. The Druids. Now, ask yourself, Drew's talking about family connections when it comes to the Dark Druids? Absolutely, I am. Okay. Clan Rooney was my family that brought me up. Brotherhood family all the way. Satanic as heck. Freemasonic. Lots of background in the secret societies, needless to say. Okay. The connections there, many of them have been poets and bards of Ireland, in fact. Okay. Tells you a lot right there, doesn't it? Well, Clan Rooney, the Ruinach, which is our real name, the old Ruinach. Those from the runes, those from the rune stones, that's what it means. Were intimately related to the Druidic chair back in Ireland. That was the O'Cleans, the Collins family. Okay, so here's where Drew's family that brings Drew up actually was related to the Collinses. Isn't that an interesting one, which we call the Colleen? Okay, the O'Clean. All right. Later on in the history of the Brotherhood, you have this conspiracy theorists, Fritz Springmeier, come out and talk about the Council of 13 and all these families that were, quote unquote, the Illuminati and blah, 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 right? And does talk about the Colleen. Okay. And he does particularly talk about Joan Collins being the Grand Druid matron, our Grand Matron, and all these things. So some of the things that he said was accurate information, but he sensationalizes so much stuff. Okay, this was a Christian right-wing conspiracy theorist that was presenting this stuff about us in the first place, right? But he did say a bunch of things on the side too about John Todd Collins, right? Who actually was very active when I was coming up and everything. So I happen, have met him in past history as well. That was a long time back. And he had defected from the Brotherhood, though, and defected from the Illuminati. Okay. Ray told me the whole story. Ray Buckland actually told me the whole story one night at one of the Sabbath festivals. That's another story. Okay. So just know that within the Brotherhood, there's always been a Brotherhood of Darkness, which is actually a parent generational organization, right? That fosters the new generation, the Brotherhood of Satan. And that intimately connected with Brotherhood of Darkness has always been the Grand Druid Council. I actually hold a high office in Grand Druid Council. I'm Grand Druid. I'm the Grand High Druid for the United States. Okay. I probably would have never got there had not been for my grandmother Rooney, right? Okay. And this is basically my card for that. But like you said, it's kind of an inside Brotherhood organization. Now, my particular branch of Dark Druidism is known as the Ancient Forest Druid Grove. Now, the ancient Druids, and today we still like to, meet in groves, preferably oak. Okay. Actually, this is where my first name of my entire title, which is Druwydion Pendragon, Druwydion means. It's actually Welsh, but actually means Druid of the Woods. Druwydion. Okay. And of course, Pendragon is everybody knows about the Pendragon line in Druidism, I hope. If you don't, you need to do some studying. But the Pendragon line itself has always been really something that belongs to the Dark Druid current. It didn't belong to this guy who's calling himself Arthur Pendragon in England, okay? That recently you may have even seen him at Stonehenge with some of the other white wearing robed druids, okay? Okay. Those druids get in my aura. Believe me, they know who Drew is. It's my blood. Okay. And I honor my ancestors. That's why I'm a Dark Druid, and that's why I'm a Grand High Druid. But did Drew go through all the levels of Druidism? Absolutely, I did. Okay. Starting with Ovite, moving into Bard, and then into Druid. Now, there's also Druid orders that have it exactly opposite. They call themselves Bards first. First level is Bard, and then it's Ovite and Druids, right? Like the order of Bard, Ovite, and Druids under Arch Druid Philip Comgar. Okay. Garcon, excuse me. So, but anyway. Okay. But Dark Druidism, it's always been that Bard was the level just under becoming a Druid. And I'll tell you why in a second. Okay. So Dark Druidism has Dark Ovite, Dark Bard, and Dark Druid. Okay. In our groups. And of course, Ovite is when you're learning all the beginnings of Druidism. Okay. And you're studying major things like the trees, for instance. Okay. And also you're learning all the herbal things. There's a lot in that level. And sometimes it can take years to master those subjects and get through that level alone. The second level of Dark Bard is even more extensive. You're memorizing Druid prose, okay? And you actually have to write it out like Drew had to do. Here's some of them alone. Okay, this is all written by me. This is all magic and rhyme. Legend and tales from our ancestors. All here in rhyme. I'm going to give you some examples of that in a few minutes. It's all here. Tons and tons of bardic lore. Okay. So in the bardic level, you had to learn all these things. You had to know also, just before you become a druid, you had to know the ways to transmit the druidic gnosis too, right? And of course, that's done through what? And my lyrics have actually been used by many renowned rock stars, but that's another story too. Okay. But you have to have what? The way to transmit and teach in the druidic way. Okay. And this is what you learn as a dark bard, right? You learn that you must pass on the old ways through storytelling, right? Through music, through poetry, right? Even through art. And that's the way we transferred the gnosis to people. Okay, very, very connected to the earth way to teach, right? That's why Drew has his own authentic standing up Celtic cross in our backyard, which is mine. Okay, I call it the family Celtic cross, right? Because of my ancestry. Now I'm going to give you an example, though, of some bardic poetry, right? Now the second one, if you got tender ears, is a little more sexual prose, okay? But the first one, I'll give you an example about passing on things within the bardic poetry, right? Before you actually do become a druid. Okay. In the Dark Druids, I do hold an Arch Druid level, but I'm off that also Grand High Druid. It's another story. Okay. So here's one I wrote. Ledger. A poet and a bard. To be a poet and a bard, for that have I lived and studied hard. Was it a fairy I have seen, or the Queen of May wearing her green? I see you, my lady, while invocations to the goddess you did sing, and held up the chalice in standing stone ring. I send you these words of lore and of love, carried on the heart of the white-winged dove, who played strings of harp and strummed an old tune, and passed on the dark craft with poetry, stories, and rune. We gathered in our dark circles of stone an old dark grove of trees, and drank honey mead made from the bees. I still pass down the lore that is so old, and in my soul this story is told. Even now we're still seen with bonfire on the hill, because our kindred lives on, our spirits they can't kill. So whenever you see a Celtic cross, stone circle, or an oak tree, it's there we live on and have been set free. Now you've heard the old story with words that are true, and the bards still live on in me and in you. To be a poet and a bard. Okay. And that's just an example, of bardic poetry. Now this one's a little more on the sexual side, but we just passed solstice. So this one is called For I Am Pan. This is one written by me also. I saw the lady dancing naked in the wood and ran to her as fast as I could. For I am Pan. She offered me her breasts, bouncing in soft moonlight, for me to suckle upon. For I am Pan. I got down on my knees and tasted her moist ripeness with passion uncontrolled. For I am Pan. She laid down and spread her legs for me, taking my hardness with wild delight. For I am Pan. I laid in her embrace until dawn did grace my face, and the lady she was gone. I understood, for I alone dwell in the wood. For I am Pan. I played my pipes, a tune so old, and sang to her a song, an ancient song for a lady I have loved for oh so long. For I am Pan. So if you want me, if you could, come look for me within the wood. For I am Pan. Remember this if you can, for I am more than just a man. For I am Pan. Wow. Okay. Very powerful. So that gives you an idea of Dark Druid prose and poetry. Some really powerful stuff. The spell work that goes into memorizing some of these things, chanting and all those things fall under the category of Dark Druids. The way to transmit the dark knowledge, the gnosis, right? That's why the Dark Druids are so important to the Brotherhood. Not everybody makes it to Dark Druid. You have to be very, very advanced. You have to be connected to the dark feminine. And you have to understand above all that the Garnerian Wiccans presented the goddess as this fluff bunny, kind of fairy-like, creature, when the dark goddess was the dark goddess. The consort of the dark mother, the dark goddess, was nature's god, known by many names in the past. The Dark Druids know this. Okay. So another thing that is the charge of the Dark Druids is to make sure the dark feminine is restored, right? Why do you think Drew's always saying, I'm always saying this to everybody, reclaim, reclaim, reclaim. Now, does reclamation have a lot to do with Satanism, the left-hand path? It absolutely does. We want to reclaim what is rightfully ours, past the gates of death and birth, our inheritance of the earth. It's in the bardic lore. Vision fade not from our eyes of a satanic paradise, past the gates of death and birth, our inheritance of the earth. Wow. Wow. We have to reclaim for ourselves. We are our ancestors are us, and we have returned. We must reclaim. Guess what connects with the reclaiming movement within the Dark Druids? Satanic unity. The exchange of knowledge between all of us as individual stars and Satanists. That's what a true covenant Satan is. Wow. The area of Dark Druidism. You know why we have a lot of things this time of year, why there's a dark side to their Christmas season? Because first of all, of course, it's our Yule, right? Our reclamation again, we're reclaiming. They try to make their holy days on our fucking ancient sites, the days of our ancient observances at our sites and everywhere else. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Wow. That's a custom that is from the Dark Druids and is done as the hanging of boughs of holly is in honor of the Holly King that was just slain by the Oak King at Yule. The putting up of a Christmas tree. There's some memes out there today that say it's witchcraft. Well, in a way, but it's really Druidic. And actually Scandinavian, Germanic, the Danish country, Danes, is where those traditions came from. And Viking Yule, of course. Okay. So why would the Dark Druids be important to the Brotherhood? We keep everything alive. Once in a while, you're lucky, and you have a Dark Druid and a Master Counselor. And I hold both offices. I'm reminded of that song, you don't know what you till it's gone. Sometimes, right? Some of us out here are actually very rare to find. Thanks be to the Brotherhood that I'm out here like this today. My family didn't want me to be this public back in the day, I can tell you. But I later grew into this position. But I have, a sacred charge myself. Right? And again, it's some more Dark Druid, prose when I say these things. Right, here it is. To keep alive the old ways. and wear the old horn. For this do I live, and for this was I born. Now, that says it in a nutshell, as far as my own life's path as a dark druid. Right? So, in my own motto as a dark druid, I say, my destiny is to wear the old horn. But what is the charge? My charge is reclaiming. My charge is to keep alive the old ways. The old ways were pre any name of Satan, Satanist, or even later Wicca. We were always satanic witches, dark pagans. We're Satanists today, we're worshiping the old gods and goddesses of the dark pagan cultures, later demonized by the church. We still use that term today, demons, when they're the ancient gods and goddesses. Okay? And there's so much more to all that. The Dark Druids are in contact with those interdimensional beings. We can open those doors with that. That's why a lot of our things that we do, there are strange lights in the skies and strange occurrences and things like that happen. Phenomena, paranormal things. Magic's a current. At least we forget it. Thank you all for your time. I really enjoyed talking a little bit about the Dark Druids. I could be talking a lot more extensively about this subject. It's not the time for it, but I was able to talk about what I was able to say. Even in relation to my own family that raised me. Was responsible for everything I went through, my satanic baptism, my ordination as a Satanist high priest at 13, and so my rising to master counselor in 1976, and all of it. I owe it to them. So behind the shadows, not just was there Brotherhood generational Satanism, in the secret societies, but Dark Druidism was always with me. My Aunt Agatha, we had summer cottages at a place in Antioch, Illinois. I'm from the Midwest. And the whole family we had like 7 summer cottages. This is Druidic too. I had to add this little family history for you. But I had an aunt. Her name was Aunt Agatha. Kind of like Bewitched, but this was really Aunt Agatha. They called her Aggie. Okay. And her cottage was built around an oak tree. Okay. The trunk of the oak tree was in the middle of the fucking cottage. And she would decorate it with all kinds of things. Again, that's a dark druid custom from the old families. Yes, generation. The building of your domicile, the place you're going to live, your abode, the place you're going to live at, around a sacred object. Whether it's a standing stone, it's a trunk of a tree, you get my drift. Vortexes, something that really connects you. Now, the key to that tree, my Aunt Agatha's tree, in the middle of the cottage, big oak tree, trunk going. So the roots of that oak tree are under the cottage. And she explained it to me like this. She said, David, I was still a young child. She said, David, this is the Brotherhood tree. It's symbolic, but you notice it's a live tree. And the roots are coming up into the trunk of the tree and go out the ceiling, and the branches and the leaves are over the top of the cottage. And then I understood. Interesting times back when I was a child. at the same place where we had the summer cottages, we had a witch's well. That's even cooler. And we would drop copper pennies down there, right? Make wishes. That's chocolate. They would send me and my other kids, my cousins, my age. They'd send us out. One of the Dark Druid customs as children in generational Satanism was we would get sent out these little baskets, right? And my dad will give us a penny, 1 cent, for every big black acorn we could collect. And he only wanted these beautiful black big acorns. And I'd always come back with the most of it, right? Later on, my aunts and my grandmother would make druid necklaces and stuff out. Okay. Again, Dark Druidism. The family's living it. Back from our histories. European transplanted here to Europe, to America. Okay. So today, I'm still very active as a Dark Druid, and needless to say, it actually is part of my Brotherhood assignment. And so Drew likes to, I don't just teach by classes and discussions like this, firesides with Druwydion Pendragon, office broadcasts in our YouTube studio. I teach the Bardic way also, the Dark Bardic way. There's poetry that is satanic as hell that comes from Brotherhood generation families. It's part of Dark Druidism that I'm actually going to start teaching too. And they're very powerful. These are very powerful. They're from, generational archives. They're not out in public. No. Drew knows them. I remember. Anyway. So we've got a good future coming up on all of these types of things. But, the Dark Druids was a subject. It's a little bit on the taboo side, like I said, especially its connection with Satanism. Its real connection with Satanism, let's just say it that way. Or the dark pagan current, let's say it that way. Before the name Satanist was ever used. And that's how our history was taught, Now things like the alphabet, those are like the runes, like the Ogham alphabet, for instance, the Druidic alphabet that I also had to know going through my Druid training, like the Ogham alphabet, right? But just in the regular word alphabet, alpha beta is there, isn't it? Wow. Okay. Now Drew could talk for hours, guys, and keep going into things here. All right. But you get my drift. Dark Druidism has been around us for. Okay. If there's nature, there's Dark Druidism. Our mother is dark. She's not this fluff bunny goddess presented later by the Gardnerians and then later Alexandrians and so on and so forth. After that, it's just simply not the truth about her. I champion my Dark Mother. Okay. Proud to be a Dark Druid. Now, you'll see things at our events, where we do Bardic sharing. That's part of the way the Dark Druids can bring things into Brotherhood of Saint and into the new generation. Okay, and so you're going to see Druid continuing to do those kind of things, and Arendelle most likely, and others. Okay, and that's where our origins come from. Is our our knowledge of the Dark Druids and the Dark Druidic lore actually, and the way to teach it and pass it on and transfer it. How to transfer the gnosis of it, the current and transmission, the frequency, the vibration. We call it many things. sometimes people say, well, how do you know if you're a druid? How do you know if you're a hereditary witch? Well, you're going to know it before anybody else knows. Okay. And how you know it is it's the frequency. And once those, your connection with your ancestral line is really made, your silver cord with Brotherhood, okay? When it's really made, both living and dead, um, that's when you'll know it. You'll start vibrating at that place yourself, right? There's certain ones of us, yeah, you're going to get around us and we make the atmosphere and everything change. The environment will change in a more magical way, right? Like right there, I just had, just moved my hands. I just had the light go up and down in here. Anyway, and that's not me, that's the sun. Okay. But another story, because it's right after solstice. My druidic craft is shining brightly. All right. Thank you all for your time today. Like I said, it's if you do walk the dark druid path, it's extensive. It can take years. I sure didn't learn it overnight. Um, part of my brotherhood training, part of my life was intimately connected with my research, study, and practice of, you know, of the dark druid current. So I guess that goes me back to that satanic moral of the story with pretty much all the things I say to people, earn where you're at, earn the different things. There's a lot of people that go out and give themselves a title because they might have worked with one person um, for a little while, an ex-boyfriend or husband, and then they give themselves the title of high priestess or high priest, whatever it is, and stuff. But they really never were a high priest, high priestess, or anything like that of an entire coven or an organization, or really. So what Drew's trying to say is, these things are hard earned, everybody. They're not something to snap your fingers or twinkle your nose like Bewitch and Samantha, right? And all of a sudden you're an arch druid, or all of a sudden you're a dark druid, all of a sudden you're an arch high Satanist high clergy member. No, they're all hard earned. Any entitlement I hold, I earned it. So when I'm dead and in the grave and dead and gone, and looking at everybody from the other side, that's one thing that's going to be able to be said about Drew. Drew was and is everything he passes on to people or he talks about. And he lives what he believes. That's the real dark Druid path. You give your blood. I can't tell you how many times. I saw my wrist, you see, and I'm not a cunt, but I have cut myself for Satan and for the demons and for the Mother Lilith a lot of times. More, I think, than any other living high priest today in Satan. So when you've walked my path, criticize me. When you've worn Drew's moccasins, criticize Drew. Most can't walk the path to duration. Live what you believe what you live, right? Craft your life, live your craft. All right, everybody. Thanks for your time today. Ad Majorum Santane Gloriam. Again, I hope everybody had a great Yule, past Lesser Sabbath we just went through. Enjoy yourselves. We'll make it through the Christmas Yak holiday. Okay, their holiday. Again, remember the Dark Druids know that the whole winter seasons are, all the 4 seasons are the seasons of the witch, like Drew has said in past bits. It's not just harvest time's the season of the witch. No, you walk your path. All 4 seasons are the season of the witch. You could walk in your path in those 4 seasons to be able to make that claim. Ave Satanas, may we all live long and prosper. Thanks for your time today. May our Mother Lilith guide you always.